part of what it means to be a being in time, I think, where we're not fully united with God, is um, we still have yet to fully see the objectivity of the world in the absolute yet. So we have the space is open for the creation of these imaginary realities, which, as Maximus says, do not in fact exist. And I think the essence of this non-real, purely virtual existence is the purely self-posited, of course, in the form of a failure of the death drive, which I think is the essential structure of all sin. And ultimately, as I was saying, all sin is pride. I think I was saying that earlier. The pride is corresponds to this structure of the death drive, and I would want to articulate that probably somewhere else, maybe in writing before I try to verbalize it. But I'm not sure. By the
And
way,
all the
my
best
my
stuff. You're
yeah,
you're you're kind of I really like what you're doing. Like in one sense, you're reading very carefully Žižek and Lacan and others, and you're kind of saying these people describe incredibly well our current uh, mode of being in the world. And then
right.
what you do is you go. So it's like I'm imagining there's an old story in Belfast where a guy American comes over, gets on the bus and says, "Listen, I'm going to Belfast. What stop do I get off?" And this guy Seamus says, "Oh," he says, "Mate, listen, just look at where I get off, right? Look at where I get off and get off the stop before me." Right. And that's what I feel you're doing. You've gone all the way with Shizek. You've gone all the way. And then you get off the stop before somehow, which which I like. But it's like, yes, the difference between you and I at the moment is you take all of that, but then so for me, again, it's like where for me, sin or negativity is well, sin is I say the repression or foreclosure or disavowal of negativity.
Mhm.
And for you it is drive. So in other words, for me, death drive is constitutive. Death drive, and for you,
Right.
death drive is ultimately able to be overcome.
Right. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I would understand, like I'm not sure where exactly it fits in within like a Christian theology of sin, but I was going to say this earlier. The way I see it, I sort of see it as a potential within the subject. So I think what Zizek sees it as is the actual core, the void of the subject, which is just sort of obscured by the fact that we are like actual persons, like with egos in a symbolic world. We very rarely confront sort of our own inner negativity. Um, but for Zizek, this negativity, this void, this inhuman void that destroys all substantial content, um, it is uh, it is actualized at the core of the subject. While what I would want to say more so is that Zizek is philosophically articulating a potential of subjectivity as free beings created in the image of God. I think there's this potential for absolute withdrawal, and I think this potential is only ever actualized in hell as Gehenna, that as a moment of consciousness. So I don't actually think it is the core of our subjectivity because I don't see it as constitutive. And this is sort of like the main disagreement, as you were saying.
Since Peter, and correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, said that the negativity death drive, it's constitutive to our subject,
Right, right.
ontological,
Yeah,
right? Whereas I
right,
believe you're claiming it can be overcome. And then
right.
the question was, how do
Well,
we overcome it?
yeah. Well, I think the way we overcome it is very practical, and it's given in in scripture, and it's given in the church. So that is sort of a whole different conversation, I think. But that for me is it really is revealed by Christ. So for me, yes, I do believe in the church. I do believe Christ established a church with bishops and a hierarchy and stuff. But fundamentally, though, what I believe in is the person of Christ. The person of Christ is the center of my whole worldview, basically.
Yeah. And we definitely will have more chance to have more
Oh,
conversations. I want to say I was kind of going like in one way, Karl Barth once critiqued Paul Tillich, and I think he probably critiqued Bultmann for the same thing, but he said, like, you guys use all of this philosophy to kind of as a way to postulate the problem of human existence. And then Christianity is the answer to the problem, and which is generally what very smart people do, like yourself. Is Bultmann and Tillich were very good at, they understood, and I think radical orthodox guys do this as well, very smart, and understand and use and see the work of Hegel and Lacan and Žižek, and as a way of describing a certain kind of condition of humanity. And then they come in with the orthodox answer. This is, and which, you know, so I will, in another conversation, I want to jump in on that, going like, you understand all of this, you've got it all, you nail it all, and then you come in with the person of Christ is the answer. And I think, like, right, that's the bit where I want to have more conversation with you to go, okay, are you really, like, I don't know. I guess I was always on the side of Paul Tillich against Karl Barth on that. I thought, but now in this conversation, I feel like I want to be like Karl Barth and go, you're using these philosophers to pose the problem of human existence, and then, you know, Christianity is the answer to it. Whereas Karl Barth almost says, don't even engage with the philosophy. Why even bother engage with Lacan and Žižek and all of this? You know, I guess Barth might be saying it's all in Christianity. You know, the problem is articulated beautifully there, and the answer. But again, I think you agree with that in a way, because you do connect the theological language of sin, you connect biblical verses with these concepts. So yeah, I don't know, I'm just waffling.